Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Music Podcast, where today I have with me Mr. Ron Young. Ron has been the singer for Little Caesar for more than 30 years, probably 35 years now.
Yeah.
Uh, he has also fronted bands like Manic Eden for 5 minutes or so, and a revitalized version of the Cruzados. Little Caesar, poised to conquer the world back in 1990 with a major label debut on David Geffen's DGC label. Jimmy Iovine as a manager, John Kalodner as an A&R guy, and legendary producer Bob Rock to produce their first record. What could possibly go wrong, right?
What could go wrong? A
uh,
recipe for success.
Ron has written a book about his life and his experiences in the music business in the new book, Judge This Book by Its Cover, out now from JRNYman Publishing. Ron, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here, man.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm admiring your good taste in musical accoutrement behind you.
There is everything here. I need to be surrounded by music. It's a lifeline for me. It's always been.
Yeah, no, it's a sanity saver for me as well.
Yeah, yeah. And that's good that you can say that after a lot of the experiences that I read about. It's it's got to put a damper on, I mean, I go in and I just listen to music. You coming from the business side of it, does it make it any harder, with all these bad experiences? I mean, you've had great experiences too, but so many bad and negative experiences from the business side. Does it make it harder for you to actually just sit and listen?
No, it doesn't. It did for a while until I got my head around it,
Yeah.
until I came to terms with it, until I accepted it, um, until I stopped being this, you know, sort of spineless, filled with self pity bullshit guy that I became for a while and got into drugs and everything over it. Um, yeah, rough, but on the other side of the coin, I, I I'm a fan of music before I'm a maker of music, and so it took me a while to realize that commercial success and making credible music aren't always the same things,
Hmm.
because I'm sure every fan of music could list 10 bands that they can't believe there's some band that's successful with as crappy as they think they are. You know, we all have our opinions of those kind of bands.
Yep.
And, and so for me, it's like to understand that to rise to the ranks of having guys like you mentioned think that it was worth their time and energy affixing my star to their wagon or vice versa.
Hmm.
That alone to me, sort of like getting nominated for the Grammy. You might not win, but just getting nominated, and people say, "Oh, you say that because you lost," but
Yeah.
it's true. That just means that you're in a company of people, because I can name 100 guys that I know who are incredibly talented players who have never had the opportunities that I ever had to make music, the people that I got to make music with, and the experiences I've got to have. And so I need to wind up having a feeling of gratitude for that rather than remorse.
Yeah, and that comes across in the book. And I was so excited
Well,
to read this book, man, because like I was saying, we've been friends on Facebook, and I've seen your posts, and all the way back to MySpace. You're just there's an intelligentsia about you, the way you say things. There's a reason you write the lyrics for the things you sing. You have a way with words. Even if it's something that, somebody might not agree with, there's an intelligence there that gets respected, the way you say things. So when I saw you were writing a book, I said, this is going to be a great read, no matter what's in it. I knew it was going to
thank
be a
you.
great read, and it is. It's amazing. But there's so much in it about every facet of your life, which was really great. You go over all the bands, you go over your childhood, you go over why, friendships fell apart, things like that. Your marriage, it's just everything's in here. And there's, all kinds of quotes. And I got to tell you, I was reading the book and I was actually at Starbucks with my daughter. She's 23, nursing student, right? She's studying, I'm reading, and I just laughed out loud. And she smiled and she looks over at me and she said, "What's so funny?" Well, I said, "Ron just got refused $10,000 advance." And he said, "What the fuck?" And then he got refused. He said, "Okay, 5,000." He got refused for that. And he comes back with this line: "What the actual cinnamon toast fuck?" And I laugh myself to tears every time I read that. This, there's all kinds of these little, you need to copyright these things, Ron. I'm telling you. And sure
You know,
enough,
it's the New Yorker in me. We're a plethora of these great little things that you wind up hearing from out of the mouths of brilliant day-to-day people that you walk past on the street.
it was great. And this is, that line is in the midst of all this, like I say, your intelligence, it just beautifully crafted, grammatically correct text, which I thoroughly appreciate.
Well,
Don't
listen,
tell more.
I can't take all the credit for that. I have to be really, really honest. I wrote the book with a guy named Steve Olivas.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, I had so many people over the years say you should write a book. After all these stories, they're really great. I finally met someone in Steve Olivas that had the sense of humor, had the curate, because it's curation. I mean, it's really
Right.
what stories do you put in and out? What things do you pick up and don't pick up on? Put in and what don't you put in? And a lot of that is Steve's. Because you know me from Facebook, so you know what I write about in these small little, paragraph things.
Right.
And Steve took that and put it into that consciousness that I have in a long format type of thing. And he's brilliant at it, absolutely brilliant. And he made it because what we did is we would sit down for like two times a week for like about 2 hours at a pop. And he would just ask me questions and I would just start to go. And he would stop me to get more, to a little more details on some things.
Right.
And then he would take all that and put it into like this free flowing thought of consciousness that was very focused. And I was like, wow, I'm not that focused. I remember telling him these stories. I would jump all around because one story would remind me of another story. And he was so good at lining all of that back up to make it come across as if I'm actually a lot more lucid than I really am.
Well, it is.
Thank you.
It is.
And
It's gorgeous.
it's interesting because, like the Facebook thing and social media stuff. I tried really hard to be fair to people in books, to talk about. It's really easy when you're frustrated with somebody to talk about what you're angry about, and you wound up bashing them personally. And sometimes, you can be angry at someone and things don't work out. It doesn't mean that you should get nasty on a personal level.
Right.
So things for like, breakups of relationships, until the relationship breaks up, you think somebody's really great. And we tend to forget that right after the breakup. But I really tried to make sure that people came across in a good way and explain why things didn't work out. And whether that's with Jimmy Iovine or David Geffen or my first wife or a guitar player, so I'm grateful that balance came across.
Yeah, it definitely did. It definitely did. And here's another quote. It was like living with a rage-filled Eeyore. Yeah, that's just great, man. And that's, of course, referring to you with Marlana, your first wife,
Yeah.
and you talk fondly about her. You say the chutzpah needed to be a performer all came from her. Things like that, and very much respect her. She was a great cheerleader. Things like that. You put her through hell. and I think you said in the book you have a friendly relationship with her now. You respectfully go through the Fidel and Apache relationships too.
Yeah.
And I never got the feeling like you were slamming anybody, which is it's great. I don't, because I mean, I don't want and the negativity of that. You can do it
Yeah.
without
And you
bringing
know
somebody
what?
down.
This is the reality. Even David Geffen, who screwed me over, the reality is he didn't screw me over. He protected his business.
Right.
The choice that he made in how to protect his business, kicked my ass into the dirt and crushed me. But if I was in his position, I probably would do the same.
Yeah.
So if you're honest with yourself, I've been lucky that nobody has really screwed me over. Not former band members, not former wives. And if you're going to be honest, call it the way it is. I mean, it's sometimes relationships just don't work, business or personal.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that came across.
Man, that is kind that you say that about David Geffen.
Well,
He might be your least favorite person on the earth, right? That's fair to say.
uh, yeah, no, he's definitely up there for sure. But also listen, if you get to a place in your life where you're happy where you are and you're grateful, you can't curse your past because your past is what lets you up to where you are. And that means you're totally accepting for everything as it is. Because I have to be honest, if I got everything that all those guys promised me, I'll back up a little bit. Let's look at, we won't name any names, but let's take your stereotypical famous rock singer, be it the ones that are really fat or really drug addicted or really a hot mess or can't have a personal relationship or keep crashing cars or who everybody thinks are an asshole. I would have been one of those not so nice people. And be that. I don't want to be rich and miserable, famous and miserable, unhealthy, or have people say that I can't sing anymore. And I would have been one of those guys if I would have gotten my way. And I'm happy. I'd rather be happy than to be whatever our fantasy thinks. Oh man, that guy, if I was that guy, my life would be so great. I know a lot of that guys.
Right.
And I'm telling you, I see your profiles on Facebook. You got it going on, man.
Yeah.
You got wives and kids and hobbies and passions and you know what? You're people sort of they glorify fame, they glorify notoriety, and especially with things like the Kardashians and all this other.
Right.
People want to be social media influencers because they think that that would be so great. It's really not, man. It's not. You want to be happy. That's all you want to be.
Yep. We all want to be happy, man. Let's go over happy. 4 horses, 2 pigs, too many donkeys, 1 mini horse, 5 mini cows, 5 cats, and 4 dogs. That sounds pretty happy to me, right?
And about 200 big koi fish too.
Yeah, man. That is just so cool. Did you see that coming when you were in your 20s?
I pinch myself every goddamn day. How the hell did this happen to me? Like yesterday, I had 102 fever, and I've got to go meet the John Deere repair guy down at my gate to get my tractor back on my property. Our fucking John Deere tractor. How the hell? I love my vehicles. I got a lot of hot rods and motorcycles.
Yep.
I never thought a John Deere tractor with a backhoe and a front loader bucket and forklifts and a till would ever be in my arsenal of hot rods. So,
I love it, man. And that's what makes you happy, right? I mean, you're a happy guy.
It certainly keeps me excited, that's for sure.
It's just way cool, man. It's just so cool. Uh, another quote for you. We'll go back to the beginning. If we were allowed to make our first record the way we wanted it to sound, it would have sounded more like Soundgarden's first album and not the shiny Bob Rock record we made.
Right.
Looking back at that, do you feel like Little Caesar, if it could fit into the '90s grunge movement that was happening then, if it was done differently in the studio?
Well, this is my broader take on what happened with glam metal going away and grunge metal exploding.
Hmm.
We remember that. Well, I'll back up. I put a band together in the middle of the 80s when every band looked like a bunch of girls with teased up hair and eye makeup, and everything was pop and shredding guitars, and it wasn't very blues oriented.
Hmm.
The music I love was more based in the 70s, soulful singing, guys sounding like Ben,
Hey.
and things based off of blues scales and very soulful type stuff. So I put a band together that was very retro in a sense.
Hmm.
And when we got a record deal, because we stood out amongst all those other bands in Los Angeles, we wanted to make sure to keep true to that whole thing. So when we started working with Bob Rock, the whole point was to make a 70s sounding record. Bad Company meets AC/DC meets Leonard Skinner meets Zeppelin meets Black Sabbath. Honest, you close your eyes, you can see the band in the room. Now, when I said Soundgarden's first record, if you put on that first record, it doesn't sound like She's My Cherry Pie. It doesn't sound like Slaughter or Winger or Warrant. It sounds like Sabbath. And so when I heard that, I was like, see, now that's what I've been trying to tell you guys. And I even said, kids are getting sick of this. It's formulaic. It's getting so predictable and so just, it's becoming a parody of itself. And of course, people are like, oh, Ron, you got to go with the flow. This is what's out there. You got to find your way of fitting in. And I'm like, the way we fit in is by not fitting in. We're talking about rock and roll, for God's sake.
Right.
We're not
It's all about
selling,
not fitting in.
right. We're not selling toilet tissue. The whole point of rock and roll is to be something new. And I kept saying, kids are going to want an alternative. And what did all that music get labeled as? Alternative.
Hey.
And so, sure enough, when we heard Soundgarden's first record, we were like, there you go. That's the kind of stuff we were talking about. Yeah. And that came out, what, in like 91? Yeah. Our first record came out in 90. So we wanted to make a record that would have been more groundbreaking. Our music was never groundbreaking. We never, all we ever were trying to do is pay homage to our heroes in our own way, But in the same way that the Rolling Stones were paying homage to old blues guys, and Paul Rodgers was paying homage to old soul singers, So we didn't think it was that big of a stretch, but from the corporate perspective, they did. They just couldn't see us, couldn't see making the kind of record we wanted to make and doing it the way we wanted as being anything but disastrous. Yeah. So,
yeah. And it's funny. I mean, I love the first record. I really do. Honestly, I
like the first record too. But what I felt it set us up for a problem because it was just slick enough to make people look at the photo of the band and go, wait a minute, how does Chain of Fools and In Your Arms come out of this band that looks like Motorhead?
Right.
So what the record company did was quickly try to get us to like shave off our goatees and put on puffy polka dotted shirts. Like that was going to fix it.
Yeah, a silk scarf and some lipstick for Ron Young. That would have worked.
You never know that this guy is, pay no attention to the motor oil.
Yeah, they had that one wrong for sure. You say in the book, music was a huge part of culture. back then. That
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be the case anymore, and I would totally agree with that. Do you think that will change? Will music ever become a huge part of our culture again, you think?
Well, this is the thing. I'll step back a bit where it's really about technology. Technology was very crude back in the 70s, 80s, even into the early 90s. It didn't have all this, you know, imagery and sound and sparkle and in the easy of your hand. So music performed a cultural role when I was a kid where it was the translator and the way of helping me express and explain the feelings that I was having as a teenager in a way that nothing else could. So for me, when I was having, when I was in puberty and having all these sexual urges every 8 seconds, and I was listening to Robert Plant, squeeze my lemon till the juice runs down my leg, I knew exactly what he was talking about.
Right.
And that was the only way it was allowed to be said without getting in trouble. It's called double entendre. And
Mhm.
music was known for it for decades to break the barriers of taboo subjects.
Right.
Now a same teenager types in squeeze my lemon till the juice runs down my leg, and you can see 47 high definition videos of somebody shoving a lemon up their ass
Right, right,
for sexual, you know.
right.
So I think unfortunately it's ruined a lot of shit. It's hurt a lot of art. I think it's diluted a lot of things in music and in culture, and not for a lot of good.
Right.
There's a lot of reports coming out how humans are just really, like young males are dysfunctional now because
Yeah.
they watch porn and they think that's what like intimacy is and romance is. All I know is like if you'd ask most women that when you got them naked, if you were going to spit on their clitoris and smack it 10 times, like they see in videos, if they really like that, they're going to say, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
That's not really what turns me on. And so there's this real distorted sense of a lot of things, how this got into sex, sex and rock and roll. But
Yeah.
getting back to the musical side of things, I think that there was a mystique around music and it formed a function in our society that, is just not really as prevalent or as powerful as it used to be.
Yeah, I
It's
would agree.
background music now, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And it's
It's
quick
really
hit.
what it is.
It used
Yeah.
to be an event for me. The album came out, I couldn't wait. So that day I woke up, I ran down to the record store, unwrapped, I put it on, I read liner notes for, the whole time I was listening, and then, flipped it over. It was a whole event. It took time, and it was time that I wanted to spend. Now I listen to the first 30 seconds, I click to the next one. No, I'm going to move on to somebody else. That I think that's the way it works. It's not
It does. And you know what? Listen, when I was a kid, there was a very basic human element of bonding, social, contract between you and your friends. In the same way cavemen used to get around the fire and clump sticks and rocks
right.
together. We used to sit there and run to the magazine stand and see Cream and Circus
Yep.
and oh my God, Zeppelin's got a record coming out. And, AC/DC's got a new.
Yep.
And we would then, tickets are going on sale. And it was, well, we're all getting together, cutting school and going to stand in line at the record store to buy the tickets. And then we did the same for weeks leading up to it, listening to the music and then, cramming in a car and going to the concert. And all of that now is right at the tip of your fingers,
Yeah.
and not to mention the fact that now I mean, kids still do that now, but they do it to go rally around a guy in front of a laptop. I
Yeah,
don't understand that.
yeah, that's weird,
A
man.
guy who hits fucking play. I mean, I used to sit there and like, how fucked up is Keith? You know, how fucked up is Keith Richards or Jimmy Page going to be tonight? You
Right.
know, and now it's like, well, what kind of Molly is the DJ that's going to hit play going to be on while we all drop ecstasy? I
You
mean,
know, it's strange. I was listening to music with my daughter in the car, and there's a new Miley Cyrus song on, right? She puts it on. She likes it. She likes a whole bunch of stuff. So she puts it on, and I'm thinking, all right, she's got some talent. Um,
it does, and she's and a wide range of tastes in her music,
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm listening
and
to
she's very reverent too. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. She's a businesswoman. I mean, she knows
Oh,
how to
very
work the
smart,
system.
very very smart.
So, but I'm listening to the music, and I can tell it's a band. There's a bass player. Well,
Right, yeah, the real music people.
there's real music playing, and then she switches over. I think it was Dua Lipa, and I get the MacBook thing, doot 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 doot, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and I
Right.
said to her, "Do you hear the difference?" Not to slam anybody or put down any
No, no,
music,
no, right. But you
but
just purely
there's
from a observational standpoint.
there's a warmth, a human factor there that you don't that I don't
I
get, at
don't
least
get it.
personally, with that other music. I did get it with the Miley stuff. There was a human playing it, and it changed. There were fills. It was a human factor that I enjoy out of my music. So that lacks in a lot of music that I'm hearing these days. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that shocks me now is that the latest trend is that there's thousands of kids getting into a room to listen to AI generated music.
Yeah, yeah,
It's music created by a computer. And I don't mean like drum machines. I mean like the actual composition. And
yeah.
I get that there's a curiosity to what it is. Dude, we sound like two old men sitting at the
We do.
oh
It's
my
okay.
God, this is pathetic. It's like it reminds me of the two old guys sitting at the bocce court going, goddamn kids,
Get
these
off my
goddamn
lawn.
kids, and their music, it's so loud, I can't even understand what they're saying. Oh well.
Just for the record, I like the Miley song. It's okay. That makes me a
But
little bit
listen,
younger.
listen, Miley Cyrus is Dolly Parton's goddaughter.
Yep.
Miley Cyrus is reverent. She's got a punk rock streak running through her.
Yep.
She can sing.
Yep.
I've got a lot of respect for her. I might not buy one of her records,
Right.
but at least I kind of feel like she's got the right approach.
Yeah. I would agree.
And people gave her all her shit for being naked on her. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The fact that and a lot of people poke fun at all that, whatever,
Yeah. She's working the
it,
system. She keeps it fresh. She keeps the interest going. It's part of the shtick. It's just the way it
total.
goes. Um, let's talk about Manic Eden. I got that record here. Manic Eden. You mentioned that record in the book, and very proud of that record, which you should be. That's a crazy great record. It reminds me of Adrian's sound on that reminds me of Trower. It
Yeah,
sounds I mean
yeah.
it sounds like what you wanted to do with the first Little Caesar record. Was that how it felt to you?
Yeah, it was an honest record, and it was great to do that because I got the phone call. I forget who it was that actually called me, but got into conversations with Adrian, and they said that they had this project. They wanted to kind of remember this is now grunge is kind of taken over,
Yeah,
and
94. Yeah.
yeah, so good luck trying to put out a White Snake record.
Right.
Kind of difficult. Um, so those guys wanted to put out a record they could be proud of and looked at that opening of more honest, less produced type music coming to the forefront. And they wanted to do their own kind of thing in a sort of progressive blues way. Now, the original singer was James Christian, and he just he was doing more of an 80s sort of vocal take on it.
House of
So
Lords.
they thought that, yeah, House of Lords. So I went in and started working with him, and everybody was happy. We finished writing off the songs that weren't quite finished. And, we put the record together, and we were all really proud of it. And I'm still really proud of it. I think it's a timeless kind of sounding record. They're all just incredibly great players. There's if you listen, there's no like mountains of overdubs or
Oh man.
reverbs or any of that stuff, man. That's Adrian sitting there with a great guitar amp and his fingers just, and it was interesting because when we did the record, he had to really check himself because, part of him, he's like, right from the beginning of a solo, really fast. And he's like, no, and I got to pull it back and pull it back. And then toward the end of the solos, he would start to branch out more into that more manic, flowing kind of virtuosity kind of thing. And he struck a great balance in all of that type of stuff.
Oh yeah, it's got, like I said, it reminds me of the Bridge of Sighs record, kind of, the sound, where it's all about tone and feel, and
and Adrian would tell you, it's like Wes Montgomery, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, Robin Trower, all that kind of stuff. That's part of his musical herodom,
Yeah,
and so he got to delve into areas that he was more limited in the Whitesnake, with him and the Steve Vai and the '80s kind of thing. He looked at it as a real something to really look forward to being able to do. And then, sure enough, anything that Ron Young touches will fail. And so, it was just it was one of those things that, again, people just couldn't get it out of their head that it was basically the guys from Whitesnake trying to evolve into something, and these very lack of visionary type corporate guys just couldn't understand it. Yep. They're like, wait a minute, it's not a Whitesnake record. Nope, it's not. And it's not a grunge record, which we don't see from a Whitesnake band anyway.
Right.
So they acted like they didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
So
it doesn't fit in the box. Yeah.
It doesn't fit in the box. Yep. And and the crazy thing is that everything that corporate record companies did to make mistakes in the '80s, where they looked for every band that sounded just like the last band that came down. Right. Sure enough, grunge music did the same thing. Remember, you got Pearl Jam, which led to, Creed, which led to, Nickelback, which led to, they just keep signing the same sounding band because they just think it's going to sell a lot of records because it sounds a lot like the last band. And that it killed that whole genre of music too.
Yep. And I think that's why we get the decades. I think that kind of thing lasts about 8 to 10 years, and then people just start getting tired of it. They want to move on for sure. If Adrian came to you today and said, let's do another Manic Eden record, all those guys are still with us. Is that something you'd be interested in doing?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And besides just the musical thing, this is the thing that you learn over the decades and social media is that guys like Rudy Sarzo is one of the kindest, nicest human beings that you'll ever meet. He loves animals. He's got this incredibly generous spirit. Adrian's incredibly funny. He's an incredibly talented artist. He's a super nice guy. And besides just the music, you don't want to work with assholes.
Right. Right.
And there's enough assholes in the music business. So before the incredibly talented musical abilities that these men have, like Tommy, is just the fact of knowing that getting into a room with a whole bunch of guys that have lived so many years
Hmm.
and know what's funny and what's not funny and what's laughable and what's silly.
Right.
That alone would be just an incredibly fun experience that would make the music even better for it.
See, that's cool. Even apart from the music, just getting together with those guys would
Well, and you know what?
yeah.
That's where it starts. To feel so comfortable with each other and appreciate each other's warmth as human beings. Because remember, there's that magic of getting into a room together and hitting record, and it's an ensemble. It's the spaces, it's the interplay, it's the appreciation and the sensitivity to each other's place in a piece of music that makes for a really great piece of music that's better than most
Yeah.
because of that dynamic. And the greatest bands, that's why supergroups always fail, and bands,
Right.
because it's not about that. It's about when a great band gets put together, it's because there's a chemistry. The
Yeah.
Stones, the Beatles,
Yep.
AC/DC.
Yeah.
They just have a chemistry that nobody can ever recreate.
Yeah. And a lot of times, yeah, you remove a piece of that puzzle and everything
Yeah, and it's very difficult.
yeah. 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 Chapter 11, almost. Uh, Probably my favorite chapter in the book. This is great. Ron Young is the singer of the Chili Peppers. Uh,
Yes, yes.
I can't even hear that in my head. But boy, would I give anything to hear that.
Yeah, I would kill to have that cassette tape from the demos we did those couple
Yeah.
of days. Um,
How was that for you? I mean, how was, that's funky shit right there.
it's funky shit, and I loves me some funky shit.
Yep.
James Brown. I mean,
Well, and
go
George
on and
Clinton
on.
produced that, didn't he? Didn't George
No,
Clinton?
actually, Michael Beinhorn on that record.
Okay.
It's Michael Beinhorn.
Okay.
But the way that came about was, so it's the mid '80s. Anthony, had a bad heroin problem. Uh, they kicked him out of the band because he just couldn't get his shit together. Um, Back in those years, Anthony was not a singer. He was a good rapper, always a great frontman.
Right.
And Flea and the guys wanted to do something with more melody, less rapping, more melody. So they figured that this would be the opportunity to broaden the musical, vocabulary of the band. So they brought me in, and these were all the songs for the Uplift Mofo Party Plan. And knowing that they had this twisted sense of humor, I wrote, and I have a twisted fucking sense of humor. I wrote all these songs that would try to be clever and funny, that had rhythm and blues melodies in them. And they really liked them. They thought it was a really cool take on the music that they were doing. But before that even happened, the amazing thing was getting down and meeting with him. And the first thing that Flea said to me when he met me was, "I just got to tell you that when we get together and make music, we play every note like it's the last note we might ever play. Are you cool with approaching every note in music you ever make like it's the last one?" I'm like, dude, I have 100 respect for that. So that immediately I was like, this guy fucking gets it.
Yep.
And then just the insane level of prowess, musical prowess that those guys had was such a pleasure to get out in front of. When you're trying to phrase a vocal, you've got your kitty. Hi, kitty.
Oh yeah.
Tough.
Where is he? Yeah, he'll be up in my lap any
Yes,
second.
exactly. That's kitty
Yep.
Lynch. But anyway, it was incredibly proficient music, and it was a great amount of fun. We started to go in and record the demos. We had most of the songs knocked out as demos down in Capitol Music, Capitol Records. And then Anthony got out of rehab, and him and Flea sat down, and Anthony and Flea have been buddies since grade school.
Yep.
And Anthony was sober, and he was serious about his sobriety, and they made the totally right choice to put it back together.
Yeah.
And the rest is musical history.
Oh man, unbelievable. You
Yeah.
know, and you go through the Slash thing in there too, you know. I'm telling you, people, get this book. The Slash thing is incredible. That just blows my mind, the guy. But you say about that flea, the most powerful thing I have ever been told by another player. You know, and that's some powerful words right there. And
Yeah.
did that change the way you approached your singing? You know, taking every note a little bit more seriously when you heard that?
Yes, it definitely at that point, being 20 something,
Right.
was that you can't just fuck around with this stuff, man. That you got to have a reverence for it and a worship for the power of music.
Uh,
And it has to drive everything you do, from your music all the way through to your business. And I just saw a recent interview with him on 60 Minutes, and he's still at it. The gas pedal is to the floor with
yeah,
this
man.
man.
It is
And
crazy.
the deepest respect for him.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Uh, you smack Arnold behind over the head with a pool cue, and
Yeah,
he winces. I
he
love
does. He goes, ow.
Oh, that hurt. That's
Yeah,
great, man. You know, and you go through of course, we're talking about Terminator 2, that bar scene, biker bar scene where you smack Arnold over the head. Great scene. I love it every time. But you go into more detail than I've ever heard. The thing I didn't realize was that was the same night as the Rodney King beating.
yeah.
That's
It was
so
happening. It
wild.
was happening 2 blocks away.
Wow. Unbelievable. Yeah, another great story. There's so many in this book, man. It's just, I'll have the link below. People get this book, you can get it autographed. It's fantastic.
Yes, and yours is coming. I've been laid up in bed
Oh no,
for a week, so
take your time. I just wanted to hold it up for people, so we'll have a
oh,
graphic of it. So now everybody knows what they're looking for when they're shopping. And let's go over that cover. It's awesome. Your ink is awesome. It always has been. It's your trademark, so to speak. It's your back on the cover. Um, Tell me. Let's talk about the ink. Do you have one that means the most to you?
I don't really. The interesting thing is back in the 80s, me and Tommy Lee were the two most heavily tattooed guys in the music business. We used to laugh about it. And back then, I got tattooed to be nonconformist, to show my commitment to a lifestyle, and to basically keep the general public away from me.
Mhm.
And then in the early 90s, and a lot of it started in California with some artists that I'm friends with, it started to make it very mainstream. So Roseanne and Cher, all these people were going into the tattoo shops of LA, getting tattooed, and then showing it in People magazine.
Right.
And the next thing you know, soccer moms are getting tramp stamps and so on and so forth. And now people don't look at me as like some motorcycle outlaw. They think I'm a chef or a barista. And it's like, what the fuck? And all these people come up and want to compare ink with me. And I'm like, sorry, soccer mom. And I've got nothing against soccer moms. But I got tattooed so I wouldn't have to talk about them. I wanted them to keep a safe distance from the general public. So, no, I don't have a favorite one. I'm still getting more work done. I have run out of room.
I love it, man.
Nowhere to put them.
What was the first one? Do you remember?
First one was up on this arm, And then I got a big mural on this arm, and then I got two dragons, and then and then I did all the background. And
Okay.
then in 85 is when I did my full back piece.
Yeah, that's
And back
beautiful.
then, that was, full back piece. Wow,
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that Bob Roberts, who just recently passed away, great, groundbreaking artist. He did a lot of my work.
I mean, that the cover of the book is your back. It's just a fabulous piece, man. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So beautiful. Really incredible work.
Yeah, it's funny because the tattoos did get me in trouble on the Arsenio. Sure.
Oh, on Arsenio?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. He's
Yeah. When I
naked.
showed up with no shirt on, they didn't think that that was ready for prime time.
Yeah, well, that's
Oh,
that
well.
that was the beauty of it, man.
Exactly.
It's the Doors doing
Exactly. Couldn't get
that's
much
so
higher.
there
Right.
you go. Yep. Absolutely, man. Got to do it. If you could sit down and have a conversation with any living person, who would that be?
Um, I would like to sit down, talk. Oh my God. Uh, I maybe someone like Albert Einstein
Yeah,
and just ask what he thinks about all this science and technology and if it's a good thing for the world or a bad thing.
yeah. I often say that, I love the internet because it provides me with doing this with you. For one,
Yeah. No, I
we wouldn't
mean,
be able to do this, so it's changed my life many times for the better. But it's also horrifying, man. I mean, it is, the things
yeah,
that
no.
our kids have access
Some people
to.
cannot handle it. Yeah.
Right. That's just not everybody can handle truth or, fabrications of truth. So yeah, there is
Right. And
that side.
deciphering which is which. Yeah.
Right. That is it
Yes.
is unhealthy in so many ways. But yeah, it's a great one. Do you have something in your life? Is there a bucket list item, something you've always wanted to do? That you haven't had a chance yet. You've done so much in your life, man, and
I know.
it's so
I
much in
know.
the book. And I want to ask you that too, if you've left anything out of the book.
Yeah, no, everything's in there. On the bucket list side of things, man, I would love to just pick a list of like my five favorite singers and just sit in a room with them and some other talented musicians. Like if I could get Paul Rogers, Etta James, um, Bon Scott in a room and just sit around and jam with some really great players, man, that would be a bucket list thing.
That'd be pretty cool to do. Yeah.
Obviously, you know,
Yeah. Bon
uh,
Scott's going to be a tough one.
yes, that's going to be, yeah, you really got to make it worth his while.
What was the hardest part about writing this book? It had to be therapeutic in a lot of ways. Going back and coming to terms with a lot of things that were hardships for you. But some of it really emotional for you. Looking inside yourself, being introspective. What was the hardest part of writing a book for you?
It wasn't even writing the book, it was releasing the book. Because you wake up one day and realize that you're going to shotgun blast this against the world. And every one of these people that you mentioned is going to read this and decide whether you're being honest or the way you've presented it.
Mhm.
And I was like, what am I doing? I don't need this grief in my fucking life. And I just said, okay, you know what? You've put a lot of thought into this and you've tried to be really balanced and really honest about it. And your truth is your truth. So just go with your guts and put it out. And I'm so eternally grateful that all the response, I haven't got one people would call me up in my family. Well, that's not really the timelines live off. Yeah, but in essence, it's all there, and everybody was totally comfortable with what I did and said, and I'm so grateful.
That's awesome. Did you hear from just about everybody in
Uh,
your life in the book?
if not firsthand, then secondhand.
Nice, nice.
Like put it this way: when when you tell stories about your ex-wife
Mhm.
and you're still close friends with your ex-wife's best friend,
Right.
if the ex-wife had any major problems, the ex-wife's best friend is not going to be really nice to you the next time you see her.
Right.
And she was. So
Good.
I figure I must have did okay.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, it is an honest book. It is it's just it's respectful, and that's what I really, really loved. I didn't have a dark feeling anytime really through the book. There's dark places, very dark places.
Well,
That,
you know what? You wouldn't know the light without the dark.
right,
That's the whole point.
right.
It's a question of finding a balance between the two. You can't curse the dark because without it, you wouldn't appreciate light. And
Yeah,
you can't just try to know life is one of pure light because there's something missing in there, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So I'm glad that you get that comes across.
Yeah, man. And it was a great read. I can't wait for everybody else to read it. You sold out of the first batch already. You're
Yeah.
another it's just awesome, man. People need to read this book for sure. And I know I've kept you so much already, and I want to respect your time. Get the book. We learn about you shaking hands with Fidel Castro in Cuba.
Yes.
How does that happen? You know what I mean?
See,
It's
that's the thing. It's like what? Wait, what?
I
What?
mean,
Arnold Schwarzenegger and Fidel Castro, and I've never heard of this fucking guy.
it's right, right. That's
I mean, seriously, it's weird. It's
it's
really fucking. That's the first line of the book. Life is so fucking weird. My life has been fucking weird.
yeah, and it's so interesting and so great to hear. And like I say, it's so poignant the way you do it too. You and Steve Olivas, of course, put this thing together.
Yes,
It's
and
just the
Steve O'Neill,
flow of it and the read
sure.
is just so elegant. It's really, really nice. One of my
Thank you.
favorite stories, the maid in Cuba and her note, man,
Yes,
that brought a tear to my eye. And I think about it and I get emotional. Just these are just great moments. You go over them, like I say, they're really elegantly placed in the book. It's a fantastic read, Ron, man. I absolutely love it, man.
thank you, Scott. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for asking great questions. It was a fun conversation. I'm grateful.
Oh man, I appreciate your time. Hey, next time you put out a record, any Cruzados maybe,
Yeah,
let
well,
us
we got an EP coming up here. Yeah, we
cool.
can. We're heading back over to Europe and whew, like getting on to be like 6 weeks now. So when I get back, yeah, we can do this again.
Cool, cool. I'd love to do it again, man. Ron,
Oh,
it's
thank
been
you.
great. It's so many
Thanks, man.
years, man. It's finally great to sit down with you face to face here. I love you, buddy. Let's do it again, man.
Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate it.
All right, man. I'll
Okay,
talk to you
thanks.
soon.
Yeah,
Take care,
bye.
bud. Bye.